Good morning, everyone. Welcome to lesson 6 of our 7-day happiness upgrade. I'm running a few minutes late this morning, 5 minutes, because I was having a chat with a girlfriend of mine who's sitting at her father's deathbed in another country. And I thought, as we were getting close to 7 and I need to, comb my bed hair, I just gave that extra 5 minutes to her because that's what mattered right now. And I was thinking to myself, well, this is the perfect segue into what we're going to talk about today, which is priorities. So good morning, Selena. Understanding what we value is really, really important. And it's worth exploring yourself for the rest of your life and feeling into those shifts and changes. And knowing that what we prioritize is really important too, and they're linked, but they can be different. So I really value my work, I really value punctuality, but this morning, that 5 minutes, that just needed to be somewhere else. Would I do it every morning? No, I couldn't. Would I do it if she was wanting to speak to me about, should I buy this pair of shoes or that pair of shoes for work tomorrow? No. If it was her wedding, maybe. Do you know what I mean? So the things kind of go up and down. And sometimes we shift and change our priorities. And when I say priorities, I mean what we're putting our time, energy, and focus on any given day. Sometimes we shift and change those priorities quite a lot, depending on expected and unexpected circumstances. So to start with, I'm going to talk about priorities. So hopefully you've had to think about your values, and if you've had to think about your values and realized, oh wow, I'm not giving them enough time, this is where priorities become important. Now, we can't have 642 priorities with a 24-hour workday because we kind of need to prioritize sleeping as well. Hello, Debbie. And it reminds me of the story. I'll find it and post it in our comments about the university lecturer that had this jar and he was filling it with stones. And he was showing how, when you fill the jar with a whole lot of sand first, or little pebbles, there's not much room for the big stones. And if you put the big stones in first, then there's a whole lot more room for the little pebbles. And good morning, Debbie. And this is kind of what it's like with priorities too. There is 24 hours in a day. We need to use some of that time for sleeping and eating and life's basics, looking after having a human body. And so we want to make sure that those big stones, the big priorities, get placement in your structure before we fill it up with the stuff that isn't as important. So it doesn't really matter if you change the sheets on the bed on Tuesday or on Saturday morning, but it would really matter if you miss your wedding rehearsal on Tuesday, kind of thing. So it's like just about going, prioritizing what you can. So making sure in your structure, now depending on your care label and how important structure is, this can be super loose. I kind of sit somewhere in the middle. So I really like a bit of a daily structure in terms of what I need to priorities for the day. And I really like to have a weekly structure. So at some point this week when I can, it's important to do this. That just helps me stay on track. And I like ticking things off and feeling that forward movement because I also like learning and growth. So if you're not naturally a list person, that doesn't matter. I'm not going to turn you into one because this whole workshop is about you being you. But just making sure what you value, like if you really value, family, friendships, connection, it's a really good idea at some point in your week to just plan ahead and just make sure, I haven't seen them for a while. How am I going to see them? And making time in your diary or in, however you schedule time, that you're making time and space for the things that matter. Because life will happen and life gets busy. So we can either have it roll along unconsciously and at the end of 6 months go, oh, I'm flat, I haven't seen, I've only seen my best friend once, or I haven't gone away at all on the weekend, I haven't done anything new, whatever it is. So just planning in those things, and structure is incredibly powerful. In the life coaching context, I often structure things like we look at what are your time leaks and what are your energy leaks. So let me pick one out of, I've worked with hundreds of people. So let's say one of your time and energy leaks is going to the supermarket. Some people, through lack of structure and planning, are at the supermarket every day or every other day. That uses up heaps of time that you could be putting into something that you really value if you had a little bit of a plan and you were able to shop once a week. Stuff like that. That's where it's useful having someone outside of you to come in and support you with what are those leaks of time and energy and focus. So that's what I'm going to say about priorities. It sounds simple, but it's worth putting the effort in to make it a reality. The things that you value, that you want to prioritize, make time for them before your time gets filled up with other things. What I want to add to the picture is the knowing, and I was having a talk about this, or having a message back and forth about this morning with one of the participants in this program, where she was saying at the moment I'm prioritizing my business even over making dinner for my kids, and that doesn't feel great. And so I was sharing with her, and I thought I really want to make it part of this lesson as well. Priorities are linked to values, but they're also situation specific. So with the example of running a business, I'll use my example. When I first started, in those first few years, I've been in business for myself for a long time now, I needed to do lots of marketing. I was in an area I'd only just moved to. I only knew, the woman that owned the space that I was hiring a room out of to work, and, the receptionist and one other practitioner. So my circle was incredibly small. I needed to generate a reputation and all sorts of things. Good morning, Jack. So I had to put a lot of time and energy and effort into marketing and promotion to get known. If we fast forward to the 12 or 13 year mark, I hadn't advertised for years. My business just happened with referral. I never had to put any effort into it whatsoever. But I knew at the start, when I was putting in all that extra effort, yes, I was prioritizing that over other things, but I was setting up something that I was going to really value long term, which was having the kind of life balance where I'm a working mum, but I get to drop my kids off at school, or my son's in high school, so I don't have to drop him off, and pick them up and be present for a whole lot of things that I couldn't be present for if I wasn't running my own schedule. So sometimes in the short term, we prioritize something that maybe doesn't feel, it's not your favorite thing to do, but we're doing it for a long-term goal. So that's an example of mine. Another example might be, I know I'm going to forget his name now, but one of the amazing surgeon over in the US. I think he did the first Siamese twin separation. He worked his way up to get the money together to go to medical school by working at McDonald's. Now, was working at McDonald's values aligned for someone that valued health? I don't know the man. Let's imagine that he valued health, right? But he did that job for the long-term goal of getting into medical school, and he's absolutely now achieved, or when I watched a documentary about his life, he'd achieved his goal. So sometimes we do things in the short term in terms of priorities for something that is beneficial long term. Now, if we're doing a congruency check, so that embodiment component we talked about a couple of days ago, it is a very different thing working, I'm just going to use it, there's nothing wrong with working at McDonald's. This is not a judgment thing, but I'm just using that man's example. There's nothing wrong with working at McDonald's. But that man, if he was working at McDonald's with a view to use his capacity and his heart and his whatever he wanted to do, working as a surgeon. So the energy of rocking up to work knowing you're working towards something that is congruent would be very, very different to him just working at McDonald's going, well, this is my life. I couldn't finish school because of this. It's so-and-so and so-and-so's fault. It's my circumstances. It's because I'm black. It's because I'm this. And my lot in life now is just to work here, and I've got no prospects. Can you feel the difference? One would be flat. His body would be giving him feedback. It would be wanting something else for him. And one is, here I am on track. I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to do my job well because the paycheck I get at the end of the week matters to me, and I'm on the road to something else. And I've gone through this many, many times with clients that in the process of unpacking, well, why is there this anxiety? Why is there this depression? Why is there this disconnect? And we find that career things are part of, they don't love what they do, or not everyone loves what they do, but what they do isn't part of feeding broader values. Everything changes once we either frame it up differently or once we install a strategy for something else. So someone working in a job and they're not using their capacity, maybe they go and do a course that enlivens their mind, or they generate, it might even be like a 2, 3, 4, 5-year plan towards something that feels better. Turning up at work feels different, always. So priorities are something that we want to structure into our day to make sure we're giving ourselves what really matters. And we have, daily, weekly, monthly, even yearly. Like if you value travel, just do something once a year. Even if it's a road trip to somewhere local and you stay with friends, it's not about you have to be winning Lotto to adventure. Whatever country you're in has got amazing things. It's got trains and buses, and maybe you've got a car, and you can feed that desire for adventure and new experiences without a high price tag. And if money's not an object, we can do something else. But life can get in the way if we don't make time and have a focus on structuring in our priorities. Just going to check my notes and see. Yes, one more thing I want to say. When we add something new into the mix, so let's say that person that's already working full-time, but now they're going to study and move their career onto something else. Or I know for me, when I was running my business, I was being a single mum, I was running a house, I was doing all of those things, and I decided to write a book. Right? So same situation. Whenever we decide to put time and energy into a new priority, we have to make sure that we're not. Let me give an example. Let's say if there's a nice full bath, if you then hop in the bath, what's going to happen to the water? Right? It's going to spill out. When we have a full life and we decide to put something really important in the full life, things will splash out. So in terms of understanding priorities, it's really important to know if you're going to do something big, so if you're going to be studying 10 hours a week, or you're going to be writing a book, it's really important to consciously create space for that new thing that's a priority. Otherwise, you're basically signing up for burnout. In the incredibly short term, perhaps like my friend that's overseas now next to her dad, she might be prioritizing that care over her own sleep, over cooking, over it, who knows, she could be doing, we didn't talk about food, she could be doing whatever can be delivered and a whole lot of coffee to be there for the short term. So in the short term, we can prioritize all kinds of basic stuff to be there for a certain trauma or a certain event or a certain something, right? That doesn't work long term. So if you're going to be doing something for a year, or it took me 9 months end to end to write and have my book edited and published. And so I needed to make space for that. There were things that I had to do less of. If you need to pull an extra 10 hours out of your week to prioritize something new, you've got to work out what's going to go. Are you going to catch up with friends less? Or if you do that, is that going to really impact your energy? So maybe it's not that. Are you going to just do less gardening and have a season where your garden can look a bit trashy, but you'll get that few hours out of every weekend that you were gardening to do your new thing? So what I'm trying to do with today is help you, I know you understand, is help you really feel that your time is important, your energy is important. If you overload yourself like that circus act of plates on sticks and you've got 54 plates on sticks that you're trying to do, it's incredibly difficult to stay upright. It's incredibly difficult to nourish yourself. We end up dropping plates and then we probably feel bad about them. And it's much better to have an idea of, okay, well, this is what's important to me today. If I get that done, there can be a sense of satisfaction. This is what's important to me this week. This is what's important to me this month. Or if you're doing something like studying or taking on a new endeavor that needs time, it's about carving out, okay, well, what can I do? And there's all sorts of things. If we were talking one-on-one and we drilled into your specific circumstances, there's all sorts of nifty things we can do, like that shopping once a week, or cook all the meals on Sunday, and everyone just has to be willing to have reheated food for this 3 months while I am prioritizing that. There's all sorts of things we can do to get that time, but it can be quite dangerous to add things to the to-do list without taking things away, because there's not very many of us that are just twiddling our thumbs going, oh, if only there was something to do. Life gets filled with things, and it's about loving and nourishing and honoring you and yourself and your life enough to make sure that stuff that you really value and that's important in the short term and the long term gets your attention. So I hope that is very, very useful, as has been through the whole program. Type me questions. Some of you have sent me private messages, which is completely fine. If you don't want to put what you're feeling out into the public domain, that's completely and totally fine, and I'll answer as best as I can in this forum. Wishing you a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for our last lesson, where I'm going to talk about the incredible power of your brain. I'd say it will definitely be, based on how I've gotten these last lessons, it'll definitely be, I'd say, around that 20-minute mark. So I really look forward to seeing you then. And thank you for the smiley faces, Jan. Have a beautiful day.